Hey Retrospectors, is it important to you to have a secure email inbox that you trust? If so, stick around to the end of this episode because we're going to tell you about today's sponsor, Proton Mail, the world's largest secure email service. We have an offer for you you won't want to miss, or you can head now to proton.me/Today in History.
It's 2025, a new year and the best time to turn your great idea into a business. Shopify is how you're going to make it happen. Let me tell you how. Shopify makes it simple to create your brand, open for business, and get your first sale. Get your store up and running easily with thousands of customizable templates. All you need to do is drag and drop. Their powerful social media tools let you connect all your channels and create shoppable posts. Established in 2025. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/promo. All lowercase. Go to shopify.com/promo to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/promo.
It's February 14th. I love you. And another remarkable event is about to be uncovered by Arion, Rebecca, and Olly. The Retrospectors.
Never before on one stage in one theatre on one evening have this many world-renowned artists appeared. 200 stars of film, television, stage, music, variety, ballet, opera, and sports celebrate with us tonight as we count the stars. So said the very subtle voiceover as he introduced the Rockettes, who kicked off literally the Night of 100 Stars at Radio City Music Hall, New York, on this day in 1982.
Yeah, and what we're recalling, of course, is the recording of a show that then went out on TV that, when edited down, became 3 hours. But the show itself was, with all its sort of breaks and set changes and all of that, came to 5.5 hours for people who had paid up to $1,000 to be there.
And apparently a large amount of the audience had no idea that what they were seeing was actually a TV taping rather than a live performance for their benefit. So it actually went on until midnight, which I know that theatre goers are used to being out late at night. You know, I think 11 o'clock exit's pretty common on Broadway, but like that extra hour and a half, which I can only imagine was just sitting there in silence while stagehands moved things around, must have been actually a pretty unexciting experience.
But you wouldn't be disappointed, really, because you didn't just get 100 stars. You got actually, when all said and done, 206 stars, if you count, for example, the individual members of the New York Yankees. But I don't want to undermine the counting process. And these were real stars. Like, I don't think there's any quibble. It's not like today when it's like, oh, call them a celebrity. I mean, you're talking about Princess Grace, Elizabeth Taylor, James L. Jones, Lillian Gish, James Stewart, Gregory Peck.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the less interminable version is actually up on YouTube.
The terminable version.
The terminable version is on YouTube. So we'll put a link in the show notes so you can watch along for yourself. And I started watching it thinking I'll just sort of drift through this and see what's what. But the minute you hit play, you are dazzled by the star power. They weren't lying. It's incredible. So you've got the Rockettes who kick off.
Before the Rockettes, Arion, you're forgetting the intro red carpet montage to Everything's Coming Up Roses from Gypsy. And I think that sets the tone. You don't start with Everything's Coming Up Roses. That's the showstopper. But this show starts with that. This is a show where Ethel Merman comes on doing There's No Business Like Show Business, and we've still got an hour before the end. It's not subtle.
They count the stars as you go. So, in fact, as the Rockettes come on, they count as one. So even though the New York Yankees count individually, for some reason, the Rockettes are one sort of massive blob of rock.
They didn't want to be accused of inflating the star tally with Rockettes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took me a while to get used to this thing that each star has a number counting their presence in the lineup because it's on the screen in the kind of dull 1980s font of grandstand football results. So it's like Tony Bennett 4, Harry Belafonte 5.
Yeah. You know, the weird thing is that I skipped straight away at the beginning. I saw, there was like a sort of a rundown of where you had to go to in the video for each segment. And there was one that was like a countdown of classic Hollywood. And I was like, great, I love classic Hollywood. I'll start there. But But because I'd gone there sort of midway through the first hour, it came up and it was like, Betty Davis, 71. And I'm thinking, she looked really good on it. Like, that doesn't seem right.
Amazing.
Danny DeVito, 96. Really?
Yeah, I was like, I don't think Mary Tyler Moore was 121 when this was filmed.
And Orson Welles looked very old for 3.
I mean, I think there are only really 2 views on this, and I think your view would be similar to how you feel about puddings on menus called things like Death by Chocolate. Like, it is definitely entirely too much, but sometimes too much is what you want to eat. And if you're that kind of person, then you'd probably agree with Variety that ran the headline at the time, a true smasheroo. But if you're the kind of person who finds the Oscars about 10 times too long, then you're probably going to agree with what Time called it, a bad dream. And there certainly are parts that feel like you're hallucinating.
It's somehow both too fast and too slow. I don't know if you noticed this, but there are segments where, for instance, they do a bit where, this was when they had the golden age of Hollywood, they would show clips from an actor's career as if it was a kind of in memoriam montage of this actor, but then the actor themselves would appear and then just
Wheel
walk
them out.
away. Yeah,
And
just
they don't do
literally
anything.
appear underneath the screen that had just showed their clips, being like, look, it's Ginger Rogers, and then, away she'd trot. But at the same time, each segment is in itself so long just because of the sheer mass of stars that are being, counted down.
The bit that actually perfectly exemplifies that, I think, is the most tedious segment in TV history.
Women of TV fashion show?
No, I'd say that was watchable.
No,
It's the bit where, you'll agree with me when I describe it, like, oh yes. It's the bit where, front of stage, a woman slowly lights 100 candles on a cake, where upstage, various deep-voiced Hollywood legends are wheeled on to run through headlines from history that have nothing to do with the Actors Fund, which they're celebrating the centenary of. So they say things like, Woodrow Wilson was re-elected president and the Actors Fund was 30 years old. And you're like, oh my God, there's 70 years left of this trivia. Like, what? How can I watch any more of this? And yet, in that very slow, ponderous, like, arse-killing event, they then flash up these images from history, like Hitler became chancellor, and it flashes up on the screen like, bang, you blinked and you missed it. It's up for like half a second. And you're like, what just happened?
Yeah, well, it is worth digging into what this was in celebration and in aid of. And the Actors Fund of America is this organisation with a pretty fascinating backstory. So during the late 1800s, the United States was still recovering from the Civil War. And although theatre business was still booming, the theatrical profession then suffered this pretty bad setback when President Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth, brackets, an actor. And from then, prejudices against the profession that had existed like before then anyway, were really heightened. And from that point onwards, because of their low standing, lots of actors and performers generally were denied charity from lots of different institutions, and it wasn't unusual for them to be refused even a decent burial. So the organisation was set up in 1882 and then started to do these sorts of works. One of the first of which was to purchase bits in cemeteries for actors to be given a proper burial. And from there, they then branched out into different types of support, including homes for performers at the end of their lives who didn't have enough money to afford old people's homes, and then support for actors and theatrical professionals generally. So it's kind of interesting how it started, but it's definitely useful for them that they had this kind of star power to be able to draw upon throughout their history.
If there's one thing that the Actors Fund turned out to be good at, it's staging what sound like incredibly expensive spectacles in the name of raising money to support themselves.
Yes.
Like this
Yeah,
one,
right.
I saw something, I think it was in the Christian Science Monitor as an article from the time, and the producer of the show was saying that they'd spent $5 million staging the Night of 100 Stars, but they did still expect to make $2 million of profit. And I was kind of like, well, good that it's making a profit, but that seems like an incredibly large outlay to make less than half of that.
I mean, there's a bit of a public misunderstanding about the sort of showbiz benefit and how it works, right? So it's the same as kind of Children in Need or Comic Relief, isn't it? Where the stars that are on stage mostly are giving their time for free, but to put it on, and behind the scenes on an event of this scale, you had 668 paid workers, including 110 in the crew, 100 wardrobe and hairdressing, 112 for security. You've got to pay for the equipment, which is $900,000, $500,000 for scenery and costumes, $300,000 to rent the music hall. They weren't doing it for free. So there are costs, which are fixed. It's just that when it tips beyond a certain point, yeah, I mean, the figure that I saw that the Actors Fund actually got at the end of all of this was $750,000, which is £500,000, which, is not to be sniffed at, but at the same time, you kind of think, with that star power...
Well, it's just a much less labour-intensive way of raising that much money. Like, surely if they'd written to all of the stars who had appeared and asked them to bung in $1,000 each, they could have, made quite a lot of money doing that.
But it would have been less fun, and surely that's part of the point as well, that, even for the organisers, they just wanted to have Paul Newman and Al Pacino and Robert De Niro and Gene Kelly and everyone in the same place at the same time. And they're not going to turn up to an event that's just wine and crackers. For me, there's a sort of air of Olympics opening ceremony to it, that you've got these sort of big names, but they're sort of lost in this massive event, stadium-sized, even though it's obviously in a theatre. It feels like it. There's just this sort of, shell-shockedness to a lot of the stars who are wandering on going, I'm certain what I'm doing here, let alone, try to imagine yourself into the audience that was there that night, not having even expected that they were going to get a TV recording. They thought that they were getting a properly resolved stage show.
Yeah, I detected some modesty in Henry Winkler, actually, for that reason.
Yes.
He was projecting just an element of embarrassment. He's a big star on his own show, but, not, here he is next to Jimmy Stewart and feels a bit out of place.
I detected a lot of cocaine in Al Pacino.
Everything's coming up roses! That's what he was saying inside.
And so another week of retrospecting ends. But next week begins a day early at CLUB RETROSPECTORS. Join us now to get an exclusive episode every Sunday. Patreon.com/retrospectors.
Okay, retrospectors, let's talk about our sponsors for today. Proton Mail, the world's largest secure email service.
A bit of history first, obviously. This is a secure email service founded in 2014 by a group of scientists who met at CERN who wanted to build a better internet with privacy at its heart.
Yeah, and I've been using it, and I must say, if one of the things that you're worried about is it being difficult to migrate from another service, it really isn't. They've got this migration tool that, for me at least, made it incredibly easy to do. It was so quick as well. And honestly, moving from one service to another tends to fill me with dread, but this was genuinely a doddle.
Yeah, and once you've done that, then you're part of an ecosystem that just feels so different. There is no advertising, data harvesting, or monetization on there, which completely changes the experience that we've all become accustomed to on rival services. You also get access to Proton Mail's Drive, Docs, and VPN, so it's not just a secure email service you're getting.
Yeah, they even have the founder of the internet, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, on their board, so you know it can be trusted. And as a journalist, knowing that I and only I can access my emails gives me peace of mind that sensitive or confidential information is protected, something I couldn't say about other providers.
Yeah, your data is yours. Keep it that way with Proton Mail's privacy-first email service. Go to proton.me/todayinhistory or simply click the link in the show notes to get started and receive a 38% discount.